It's one of the most consequential, politically charged, and frankly shocking marriages in all of literary history. Today in this explainer, we're looking at how the immense burden of an entire empire's survival was dropped squarely onto the shoulders of just one woman, and more importantly, how her immediate, completely visceral reaction to that burden ended up shaping the destiny of an ancient world.
So what actually drives a princess to permanently blindfold herself on her very own wedding day? It's such an incredibly dramatic image, right? And it sits right at the heart of our source text today. Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to frame our narrative entirely around the fascinating intersection of massive geopolitical statecraft and extreme, almost unimaginable personal sacrifice. Because to really understand that blindfold, we first have to understand the fragile state of a collapsing empire.
The story kicks off with an urgent political dilemma spearheaded by the patriarch of the Kuru dynasty, Bhishma. He tells Vidura, and I'm quoting here, "It behoveth myself and thee also to take such steps that this our dynasty may expand again as the sea." Basically, he's laying out a massive, critical problem. The sovereign Kuru race, which, has historically held dominion over literally all other monarchs, is dangerously close to just going extinct. The source text actually notes that earlier, some pretty extreme interventions by illustrious figures like Krishna Dwayayana and Satyavati were already required just to keep the bloodline from completely vanishing. So now, Bhishma is absolutely determined to secure the dynasty's future so it expands continuously, much like the ocean.
So it's important to realize this upcoming marriage isn't some sweeping romance. Not at all. It's pure, calculated statecraft. It's a matter of absolute survival for a bloodline that is, yes, resplendent, but also deeply, deeply vulnerable right now. This aggressive strategy of securing new, powerful alliances is completely backed by Vidura. In fact, in our source text, when Bhishma presents his grand plan, Vidura defers to him entirely. He tells Bhishma, "Thou art our father and thou art our mother too. Thou art our respected spiritual instructor." He literally puts the entire fate of the dynasty squarely in Bhishma's hands.
So Bhishma scopes out the geopolitical landscape and identifies three potential royal matches to save the dynasty. First up, we have the daughter of the Yadava race from Sirasena. Second, the daughter of Suvala. And third, the princess of Madra. Now Bhishma makes a point to note that these maidens were vetted strictly for their pristine blue blood, immense beauty, and pure lineage. Think of it like ancient, high-stakes matchmaking. These three were deemed eminently fit for an alliance with the prestigious Kuru family.
But then, one candidate suddenly leaps to the top of the list, all thanks to a piece of intelligence gathered from the Brahmanas that absolutely changes the game. Bhishma learns that the second candidate, Gandhari, the amiable daughter of King Suvala, had previously worshipped the deity Hara, who we also know as Shiva. Because of her incredibly intense devotion, the deity granted her a divine boon. And the twist? The boon guaranteed that she would have a century of sons. Yep, exactly 100 sons. No way, right?
So the crucial point is how this specific mythic boon instantly shifts the entire political landscape. Gandhari is no longer just a mere political option or, a respectable alliance. Think about it for a second. If your singular goal is to make your dynasty expand like the sea, a rock-solid guarantee of 100 heirs isn't just a nice little bonus, it is the ultimate insurance policy. Almost overnight, she becomes the absolute ultimate strategic necessity for the survival of the Kuru Empire.
Of course, Bhishma doesn't waste a second. He immediately sends out messengers to the kingdom of Gandhara to lock down this vital match. But it's not exactly an instant success. King Suvala, who's Gandhari's father, hesitates. And honestly, he hesitates for a very real, very human reason. The Kuru groom, Dhritarashtra, is blind. We really must impartially note the very real hesitation of a father here. I mean, he's being asked by a powerful foreign entity to marry his beloved daughter to a man who literally cannot see. It's a hugely significant sticking point. Yet, spoiler alert, ultimately Suvala does agree to the alliance.
So how does a father actually overcome that deeply personal hesitation? Well, the text points to three major overriding factors. First, the undeniable, absolute, pure blood of the Kurus. Second, the dynasty's unmatched, sweeping fame across the land. And third, their historical behavior and prestigious reputation. Basically, the sheer political weight, the historical gravity, and the immense prestige of the Kuru dynasty effectively overrode Sukala's paternal concerns. At the end of the day, the statecraft won out.
But that brings us to the absolute most critical pivot in our explainer today. We've talked a lot about the macro politics, the patriarchs, and these kings negotiating across vast empires. But how did the bride herself actually react? Just imagine being Gandhari for a moment. The news is delivered to her. She is to be married into literally the most famous family in the world, specifically to secure their dying bloodline. Oh, and the husband chosen for her? He's blind. The intense, jarring, personal reality of all this macro-political maneuvering just falls suddenly and incredibly heavily right onto her shoulders.
Her reaction is immediate, and it is permanent. Upon hearing that her parents had consented to marry her to Dhritarashtra, she simply took a piece of cloth and she blindfolded her own eyes. And this brilliantly illustrates the absolute extreme lengths of her commitment. This wasn't some temporary dramatic gesture, it was a permanent physical action. She voluntarily plunged herself into darkness for the rest of her entire life. And get this, she did it before she even met him.
Now, to understand why on earth she would do this, we really have to look at the concept of devotion exactly as it's presented in the source text. The text specifically attributes her action to love and respect for her future husband. In the context of these specific ancient cultural values, her self-blinding is framed as an act of supreme, chaste devotion. It's a deliberate choice to ensure that she shares the exact physical limitations of the man she is now bound to. We're exploring a worldview here where ultimate respect literally means refusing to have a physical advantage over your spouse. So this is the neutral textual explanation for a sacrifice that, let's be honest, our modern eyes might find deeply jarring.
So, with her fateful decision made, the grand machinery of the royal transfer activates. Her brother, the youthful hero Sakuni, takes on the heavy responsibility of bringing his sister all the way from Gandhara to the Kuru kingdom. He formally gives his sister away unto Dhritarashtra, and the nuptials are finally celebrated. And of course, perfectly in keeping with the immense prestige of the dynasty, the text makes sure to note that these were celebrated with massive, massive pomp, all meticulously orchestrated under Bhishma's commanding direction.
The mission concludes cleanly and successfully. The geopolitical alliance is officially sealed, the transaction is complete, and Sakuni rides back home victorious after bestowing valuable robes and receiving Bhishma's adorations. But meanwhile, Gandhari is left behind in her new court, having voluntarily plunged herself into forever darkness.
And she completely integrates into this new world through flawless, unyielding discipline. The text really emphasizes this, stating, "And Gandhari, ever devoted to her husband, gratified her superiors by her good conduct." In fact, because she was exceptionally chaste, the text points out that she never referred, even by words, to men other than her husband or her superiors. Her behavior, her incredibly respectful attentions, and her strict adherence to these ancient virtues firmly secured her absolute, unquestioned place right within the Kuru dynasty.
Which leaves us with this final, monumental question to ponder. The Kuru dynasty needed to expand like the sea, right? And they successfully acquired the divine promise of a century of sons to do just that. But the entire foundation of this incredible expansion is a young woman who voluntarily shut out the light of the world out of an absolute sense of duty. So if a single act of devotion secured 100 sons, what unprecedented and perhaps incredibly volatile destiny awaits a dynasty built on such extreme, uncompromising sacrifice? Honestly, that massive ripple effect is exactly what makes the Mahabharata so epic. Thanks for joining this explainer today, and as always, keep exploring.